To learn English is to enjoy and experience a language that opens up opportunities across the world. Together with teachers and our partners, we're here to engage and inspire millions of people throughout their entire learning journey, helping them to confidently prove their skills to the world. As part of a university with a global reputation for academic excellence, we create insights derived from research and our expertise. Combining all of this ensures our unique approach meets the real-life needs of learners through inclusive and accessible products and services. Including the many of us who have been learners and teachers of English, we all care about the impact our work has in the classroom and beyond. By listening, collaborating, and partnering with our entire community, we enable teachers to do what they do best, teach, and learners to reach their full potential. English unlocks a lifetime of experiences, and because language is at the heart of being human, we help people everywhere connect, communicate, and come closer together. Cambridge is where your world grows.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to Start with Cambridge. And I'm Ricardo, and for the next 60 minutes, we will be talking about the beginning of a school year with strategies, tips, ideas on how to kick off a new school year. But this is not me talking to you for 60 minutes. How boring would that be? That's why we have a panel of experts. And we have Lily with us.
Hi, good morning all. Nice to see you. Well, not nice to see you, but I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, Lily needs no presentation, no introduction. And of course, we have another expert from Cambridge.
Good morning, everyone. I am super happy to be with you. As you probably can see in the bottom of your screen, my name is Brad Botzenheimer, and I'm happy to be with you. And for the next 60 minutes, we're going to talk all about things you can do this school year to make your lives easier and better.
Absolutely, and it's great to have you here, to have both of you here, because I'm sure we would be sharing lots of things.
Yeah, for sure.
So how about the beginning of the school year? Remember your teaching days, how exciting it was. How did you feel before you started the new school year, Lily?
Well, I don't know about you, but I felt really excited. I felt really happy to either continue with a group I had previously had or to get to know a new group. But I also felt a little bit anxious about what's going to happen. Don't you?
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it, Brad?
Well, I think it is exciting. I think everyone right now, and I imagine everyone watching right now, is busy planning for every possible scenario that can happen over the next few weeks in the year, etc. So you have this like bittersweet, like you're excited, nervous, and anxious all in all three emotions in one.
And the energy.
And the energy.
How
100%.
does that go, right?
Well, it's fabulous. It's fabulous because obviously we hope that all of you had a fabulous year the last school year. But if you had any negative experiences, those are thrown away and starting fresh, right?
Is the energy the same at the beginning of the school year as it is at the end of the school year, Lily?
I think that it gets depleted somewhat by the end of the school year because we're thinking of, we're almost there, we're almost reaching the finish line. And I think that everybody's thinking of their days at the beach rather than what's next.
Well,
in the
that
agenda.
happens. But that's why we're having this session today, because we want that energy goes at high level from the very beginning until the end. And for that matter, why don't we start talking about the strategies or some tips. Would you like to share a tip for teachers on the very first days of classes?
Yeah,
Brad?
I think probably my biggest tip I share with all teachers, no matter what age groups that you are teaching, is next month, almost next month, because August 31st
Yeah.
is when the school starts.
Next week.
Next week. Thank you so much for helping with my English. Next week, when you begin classes, no matter what level or grade you're teaching, my recommendation is have an extra attendance list, and beside each name, slowly start asking your students questions about their lives. How many siblings do they have? What's their favorite music? What's their favorite artist, etc.? And write that information down. The reason you want to do that is you want to draw from that throughout the school year. So the next time you're doing the present perfect, you can use Miguel's example. Miguel, maybe his favorite band or his favorite sport or favorite hobby, etc. You can use that when you're writing out the example. Then all of a sudden, Miguel is like, the teacher
Yeah.
said something that is related to me, right? So all of a sudden you grab Miguel's attention.
So personalizing, it would make
100%.
students feel closer and that they are being
Yeah.
considered.
And also,
That-
we all have only a certain bandwidth of memory, so you can't remember every small detail of all your students. So writing those things down, your students will be like, wow, the teacher actually listened to me. So I think
okay,
that's a
well,
really great idea as
that's
well.
really good. That's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it, Lily? It's a way to keep students motivated as well. It's a way to help students feel that they are being considered, they are being counted on. Anything else that you would like to share? Give us one big tip, one big strategy for the beginning of the school year.
I'd say don't forget the fun. I mean, we need to get to know our students, just like Brad says, very important to make them feel seen. But we also need a little bit of fun. So to lower that expectation, because also our students are as nervous as us, probably, or even more so. So we want to make them feel confident from day one to start, participating,
Right.
loosening up. I don't know what you think.
Especially these students, first graders, preschool, primary, secondary, even higher education, because it's a new environment, isn't it? It's a new setting. So you need to help them cope with that, break the ice. Well, that's interesting. What else would you like to share for, let's say, okay, the school year has already started, the excitement of the first day,
for sure.
but then you have to go back in business. You have to go back to your program. You have to start working with them. What happens next?
Hopefully, you have already planned this, but if not, please take this in consideration. Every single group you have, again, all ages as well, you should do some form of diagnostic test. Now, most of our series do come with a diagnostic test that you can download and apply. And that is probably the easiest way. The purpose of a diagnostic test, as you know here, is to determine where your students are at. And then based upon that, you're able to make certain plans, right? So if you have students that are above level, at level, below level, etc., you know that. Now, ideally, if everything works out well, you do the same diagnostic test in June, and there's been improvement.
There should be, right?
That should be the hope.
We can only hope for that, and I'm sure that will be. There will be, right?
100%. With teachers that are watching us today, I guarantee you.
Okay, but we don't always have a diagnostic test. I mean, it doesn't have to be really formal, or it's great if you use them. It's always good to know where they are. But are there any other ways to identify students' level without, let's say, a less formal setting?
Yes, of course, we have many ways of informal assessment. For example, any speaking activity can be taken into account for us to start gauging their level. Maybe it's not as exact, but that gives us a clear idea of where our students stand.
All right, and that complements very well because you say a diagnostic test might be just like on the written form, the use of English, and then asking them some questions would also help you identify the level of students.
Definitely,
All right,
100%.
okay. Then what happens? I mean, the school year starts, students get their books, they start looking over pages, and then what else do you do? Give us another tip, Lily.
Well, as I said before, I try not to forget the fun. Regardless of age, I want my students to feel like they are doing something productive, that they are having fun while doing it, and they don't dread going into their English classes. So fun, but fun with purpose.
just for young learners?
No, even adults.
Okay.
I've learned recently that, well, I gamified some of my sessions and some of my
Okay.
classes. And actually, Mr. Tickles right here, if you know him, shout out. It was a reward. Whenever somebody got an answer right, I gave them tickles, and they were kind of fighting over who got tickles, and they were adult learners.
Okay, you gave them tickles. That sounds funny, but we understand.
Mr.
We understand.
Mr.
We,
Tickles.
we
Well, for
understand.
those people that don't teach kinder, Tickles is, who is Tickles?
Our puppet from Cambridge Little Steps.
There you go.
Right. And by the way, before we go on, remember we have a chat,
Yeah.
and Mariana, who's also part of the team of experts from Cambridge, is with us. Hello, Mariana.
Hi, Mariana.
Say hi. And it's great to have you there because Mariana will be answering all your questions and comments and keeping everything updated. We also have Josadak and Luan helping us with the chat, and I'm sure they have been interacting with you. So,
Perfect.
okay. And now let's talk about different age groups.
Yeah,
Are
okay.
classes the same? I mean, do you teach do you have the same approaches when it goes to, let's say, young kids
Mm-hmm.
up to higher education? There might be differences.
Well, I think some of the more obvious differences, if we're talking young, very young learners, the amount of teacher support that they need, along with routines, is much more serious and much more like hyper-focused as compared to adults, right? The older the student, the more autonomous we're trying to teach them to be, including critical thinking, learning to learn. We talk a lot about our Cambridge Framework for Life Competencies.
Okay.
We'll give you some information at the end and a link to be able to find more information. But we have a set of competencies. And so the difference is we work on those competencies for all levels, but there's definitely some of them that we really want to hyper-focus as students get older. Teenagers, for example, learning to learn, really crucial for the times we're living in especially, right?
Because the role is more than teaching English.
Yes,
which is a
100%.
lot,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's really vast. But the good thing is that it can go beyond teaching English, doesn't it?
Exactly. We want to make them develop or to help them develop these competencies that they can transfer to different aspects of their lives. And they are not going to need only at school. They may need them at work when they go and graduate from university. Of course, they need critical thinking when using probably AI.
All
They
right.
need critical thinking when researching information on the net.
Creativity.
Creativity.
All right.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know, and I always tell teachers this, when you're planning your classes, yes, you have your language objective. 100%, we're language teachers. But you should also have an additional objective that is somehow related to a competence of some sort. Because, again, just going back and piggybacking on what you said, we are more than language teachers. We are life coaches. We are teaching our students how to live in a world, to be honest, that is changing faster. By the time we're finished this session, the world has changed again.
All right,
So that's
absolutely.
really important.
And how about routines? Because setting up a routine for the class would help also go along with how things are evolving, how things are moving. What are some routines that you could give teachers or advise teachers to have in classes that would work, regardless of the age group? It could be for young learners or more mature teenagers.
I'd say probably first, for any age group, let them know what the objective of the class is.
Okay.
And I know that this sounds kind of cliche at this point, but we cannot overstate the importance of students knowing what we're going to achieve in our classes or that lesson that day.
And do you do that like in written form? Do you formally inform your students that we will have today, we will learn? How do you do that? Give us one example.
I used to do it dividing up my board in 3 sections. The center section was for everything else. The right section was for vocabulary exclusively and phonology. And the left section was for the objectives, but always in communicative terms, like you will be able to talk about your routine, to write about what you did your last holidays.
Okay. Well, organizing your board, right? That's key in good teaching practices. That's a good routine also for teachers. How about another routine or adding to that?
I want to just piggyback on what Liliana said there about objectives and why it's so important. imagine any of you sitting at home right now or in your schools, and I was with you, and I said, "Come with me." What would you say?
Where?
For.
Where? Why? You want to know where we're going?
No, I would say no.
Yeah, I mean, why are we going with that creepy guy, right? But where are we going and why are we going? And the same is for your students, right? Like we're not the secret knower of all information, right?
Right.
Like, and we want to prove to our students we actually took the time to prepare the class, which all of you do, obviously. And I think that's really important. And then at the end of the class, you go back to your beautiful
Okay.
board, Liliana, and you say, okay, this is what our objective is today. Did we achieve it? And don't just settle for, and I always say this also for sometimes at the end of a unit in many of the books, you'll see like, I can, this, check, check, check. And I always tell teachers, don't allow just check, check, check. Say, okay, great, because they say check, finish, teacher. Say, okay, that's fabulous, but give me an example of the can, whatever
Right.
the example was, I can talk about, I can write about, I can discuss, etc.
Right.
Which
It's
I
a
think is
bit
important.
of prove it.
Yes,
no?
prove
Like,
it, 100%.
Show it.
Exactly, because they may just check it just for finishing the activity,
Yeah.
but they forget the part of reflecting.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we want them to learn with Learning to Learn.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Right. And okay, getting to know the objective at the beginning, that's absolutely, it's like a no-negotiable, right?
100%.
And also at the end, it's more like the checkpoint.
Yeah.
But just making sure. And at times, that happens. Students sometimes they say their parents ask, "What did you learn today?" I don't know, nothing, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then parents go to the teacher, my son, my daughter. They're not learning anything. Well, no, yes, of course, we've been doing this. It has different approaches.
Yes, 100%.
Another routine that you would like to share.
I'm going to say, I especially like this for upper primary, secondary, adults, young adults. Writing. We're in a time where we're writing less and less, and teachers probably write more than other adults in the world. But if you ask most adults the last time they've written anything substantial in Spanish even, it's probably been a long time. So, because we have so many tools at our disposal nowadays. However, it is still a skill that we need to help students develop, just in case we don't have the internet one day, and they need to actually do something the old-fashioned way.
It happens.
But it also helps acquire the language more. So one routine I love to do is to do the first 3 to 5 minutes of every single class, creative writing. And in this time, I put some music on in the background, nice relaxing music, and say, for these 3 to 5 minutes, you're going to go to your section in your notebook, and you're just going to talk about how you feel, what you did yesterday, what you did last night, etc. The key here is there's no pressure. You are not walking around stopping and correcting their grammar. It's just free writing.
Okay.
I love this because it gives students that opportunity just to take risks with the language. At the end of it, you can say, okay, if anyone wants to share, just 1 or 2 people, you can share, but it's not mandatory. Because as soon as it's public, it might restrict them as well, right?
All right.
So that's one routine I think that is really beneficial, especially today, like in 2026.
And maybe some teachers are taking note on that and saying like, wow, I want to do this. Does that mean that the teacher needs to check and review every single journal that students keep for that?
Not necessarily, I'd say. Probably
for
we
this,
choose
no.
a couple, right? We choose just a couple ones. Maybe we give them some feedback, but also there's such a thing as overcorrection. So we want to keep it light and breezy, right, Brad?
But
Yeah,
it's like,
I think for this particular suggestion, there's no feedback in this
Yeah.
particular one because it's free writing. But then in other writings, that's where we have to design
Be-
how we give feedback. Yeah.
because you don't want your students feel that they are being judged,
Uh-huh.
right, by the teacher,
Yeah.
and that they are just like, maybe I'm just going to be more careful on how I write it because I don't want my teacher to give me a bad grade or a bad note on that, no? So it's more like, breathe.
Yeah,
Just
and
let it
remember
loose.
this is part of, if I always, when I'm helping teachers come up with a plan for writing for the school year, because again, this is a skill right now we're kind of dealing with, is like making a plan. This is one thing out of 3 or 4 things I'm doing. So this one thing is this, where I'm not hyper-focused on feedback because I have a plan to give feedback in another way.
Okay. Well, this is getting more and more interesting, isn't it? And I'm sure that the teachers there are feeling like, I had never thought about it, or, I know about this, but I haven't put this in practice for quite a long. So as they say, the plot thickens, right? So
There
it's
you go.
getting more
Good
and
job.
more intense. Lily, how about teenagers? We're going to go back and forth with different age groups, but let's talk about teenagers. And sometimes the way at times they don't feel like confident to speak. They don't want to speak and use language in the classroom. Is there a way we can help teachers motivate their students or prompt them to speak in class?
Yeah, sure. I think that adding to what Brad said towards the beginning, we need to take their interests into account so that they feel seen. And this is especially true for teenagers. We need them to know that we are someone they can trust, that we are not going to judge them, that we are not going to overcorrect them even. And we want them to develop this looseness in speaking and gaining confidence. If using their interests is one strategy, but maybe also getting them to talk about themselves.
Okay.
What way or what topic do they know more about than themselves?
So would you say, for example, Brad, that at the beginning of the first days of classes, let's try not to mark them or to give them like many activities that would be graded or scored, just to help them feel like, okay, language can flow more naturally without grading and without scoring their performance?
Oh, please, yes. And and this should be something on a regular basis, that we're looking at different activities that are not graded, because as soon as you put these parameters on students or these guidelines, that's when they feel where they want to freeze up, etc. So I think not just in the first few days, you also want to make sure that this is a constant thing.
Okay.
Going back to correcting or overcorrecting, when we talk about creating a safe speaking environment for students, I always refer to something called the trauma buckets, right? I think you probably heard me talking about it before. And every negative experience that your student has had over the years is subconsciously in them, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, we're going to do the speaking activity. I want you to speak about this and that in front of everyone, and all of a sudden they remember every possible bad thing that has ever happened to them, and they freeze. So this is not just always just a one-off thing. It's about making sure we create an environment in which they feel safe at all times.
Okay.
And when they don't want to speak, think about really why. Because sometimes we teachers think, oh, they're just being lazy. Not necessarily.
Okay.
They're actually kind of freaking out inside, right?
Or we tend to say, they are shy, right? And then we start like labeling students. And I think that's not necessarily something that would be helpful. I don't ask this student to speak or to participate because he or she is shy.
Yeah.
And then that goes to the trauma bucket.
Yes,
no?
for sure,
All right.
100%. Mhm.
So how do you keep students involved? Not only the ones that tend to speak more. How do you keep students involved in class in a more often basis?
Well, I tend to have a virtual roulette where I have all the names there, and it's chosen by random. So whatever they want to say, whatever they want to participate with, that's taken into account. Again, we want them to feel safe. That's the important part, so that they don't feel they're going to be judged by us or by their peers.
And especially with young learners. And before you go on, I heard you in a session yesterday, and you made reference to that students that tends to keep like the low profile.
Yeah.
And you mentioned and you referenced something to a teddy bear or to a.
Yeah.
How about that? How does that help
For sure.
students?
For very young learners, one idea that you can use, because sometimes, again, talking to their classmates or talking to their teacher, especially like kinder, right? For those of you working in kinder or even grade 1, but kinder especially, they don't feel as nervous talking to a teddy bear or Tickles or whichever mascot that you have in the classroom. So if you set up different mascots or teddy bears around the room and you give them instructions to tell the teddy bear or something, it's much less intimidating. And that also works when, because yesterday we were talking about teaching students to slowly project their voice. So that also really works because instead of doing it just with an adult or another class member, being able to do it to a teddy bear, much less intimidating. Try it, guarantee you it works.
Okay. And you don't need to give a grade for
No,
performance.
we're not talking
right?
about grades.
Yeah,
No grades, no
absolutely.
grades.
Okay.
Yes.
Not just yet, right?
yet,
Not
no.
at that
Okay.
time. Now, maybe some of these strategies would be applicable or not to higher education, to adults. But what are ways to help adults that are, and I'm going to go back to safe speaking environments, but some ways to help those people who feel that they may be judged, especially with young people and especially with higher education students. How can you help them? Give us one idea or one tip on how to help them not to feel like too stressed to make or to do something wrong.
Sure. This is going to sound a little bit cliche again, but we need to tell them straight away that mistakes are part of the process. We all make mistakes. We are not going to make them feel like, pointed out or on the spot whenever they make one. We have to be very judicious in our use of correction techniques, our different error correction techniques. And we need to tell them that, okay, you're going to make mistakes and that's okay. And another suggestion I'd say is probably rules, right, for the classroom, because we don't know our students' personality, especially at first. So we don't want someone to make fun of or snicker or make them feel like they are doing something wrong. So what do you think?
Well, that takes us to something really interesting, and that's also for the beginning of the school year, isn't it? Like setting up rules for the classroom. Would you like to share a
For
bit
sure.
of that?
And again, hope some of you watching might know this already because we've talked about this, is setting up ground rules, but ground rules for communication. So when we talk about ground rules for communication, they are separate from classroom rules. So classroom rules would be, your standards, like do your homework, don't hit your partner, don't chew gum, or whatever the case may be. Those are under classroom rules. But what you should be doing in the first couple of weeks of class is together as a group, have a conversation about what are rules that you need for communication. So they could include, make sure you always listen actively when your partners are speaking. They could include, make eye contact when people are speaking. They could include, use gestures. They could include respecting others' opinions, right? Or they could include, for example, what you're doing a great job here, Ricardo, of making sure that you ask us both our opinions back and forth, and you're building on what I'm saying. So that shows me that you're actively listening.
I've attended one of your sessions about that, so I learned that.
There you go.
Okay,
Good.
taking turns as well, right?
Exactly,
take turns, give people the space and time, right?
So
Not
do that, and then, if possible, take your top 4 or 5 rules, put them on a poster, and then put them in a visible place in the classroom. And then, every time you do a communicative activity, you go to that poster and you say, okay, we're about to do this activity. We're about to do this session. What do you need to remember? So if Ricardo was my student, I would have said, what do you need to remember? And he would have said, I need to make sure that I always ask questions and build on what others are saying. And that's a more advanced version, obviously. We're not going to say that in grade 2.
All
Sorry,
right.
Brad.
Okay.
So those rules should be displayed only at the beginning of the school year?
No, the entire school year. I want your students to be like, to get to the point like, yeah, teacher, we know. Right? But that's good. When they get to that point, that means you're doing a great job.
So that goes back to routines and to keep a constant
100%.
in the class. I just want to go back to something you mentioned earlier at the beginning of our talk, Lilian. You said have fun, right? But have fun just for the sake of having fun. How about games and the purpose for those?
I think everything needs to have a communicative purpose, not only language-wise, not only vocabulary-wise, but to actually communicate. And many series have already made board games that they can play in pairs, so we can take advantage of that. They have already been designed with a clear communicative objective in mind. But we can also design our favorite, right? Kahoots, for example.
For sure.
Kahoots. Okay.
I want to add something to what you said. It's,
Yes.
it's kind of related when you said it has a communicative objective. I want you to really consider, why are our students studying a language? They're studying a language because they want to communicate. Now, obviously, a kid in grade 3 isn't going to come up with that answer, but their parents hopefully will. Especially in the times we are living in, as AI is kind of all around us, and we as adults can rely on AI to do many things, but the one thing we can't rely on AI to do is to make human connections. And by communicating and making these human connections, we will have better relationships, etc. So communication has always been important, but especially now, it should be your number one priority at all times. Communication, communication, communication.
And going back, I think that's really relevant. Yeah, because there's this setup,
Yeah.
the purpose for communication, and you can include games. Let's talk a little bit about games. You mentioned gamification not so long ago. Tell us a little bit more about it and what to do and how to do a gamified classes.
It can be as simple as doing a leaderboard, either physically, like a poster. I've seen teachers use stars, use medals. Even in the Kinder series, they have medals there on the platform. But in my case, I made an interactive leaderboard. And whenever my students got a right answer, they got a point. If they attempted to give the correct answer, but they didn't have the correct answer, they get half a point. They still
Okay.
get acknowledged in their efforts.
Okay.
And they leveled up every 3 points. And believe it or not, they got very into it. They were fighting. And whenever I failed to register 1 point on my platform,
They fight for it or what?
they told me, hey, where's my point?
Okay.
All right.
That's great.
Okay.
That's good.
Which is not necessarily playing games, right? A gamified classroom is not necessarily playing games,
No.
Brad.
100%. Gamified classroom is about, it's like when you're playing a video game, for example, you want to keep going because you're getting the points. And so by doing that, one kind of like I love the piggyback on what you're saying, Lily, is I always tell teachers too when they say, my students always speak Spanish, right? And they never want to speak English, etc. I always say what you can do is you can do something with points like that, but for timing. So let's say, for example, your classes are 60 minutes, and you start by saying, okay, today's goal, if your students are speaking Spanish like 80% of the time, you can say today's goal is, we're going to start with 5 minutes. 5 continuous minutes of English. And you set the timer on the wall. You say, okay, so no Spanish whatsoever, even in interpersonal conversations. Once you reach that 5 minutes, you celebrate it. You stand up, you clap, you pat each other on the back. And maybe you have like a poster on the wall with like, what do you call that? Like a little thing where you color in, like where you can color in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, up to 60 minutes.
Okay.
And then once you hit 5 minutes, and then you say, okay, great, congratulations, we did 5 minutes. Tomorrow we're going to do 6, and then 8, and then 9. What that does is it's a challenge for everyone, and give them like little rewards along the way. But then all of a sudden, your student Miguel is saying to the other student Ricardo, saying, hey, don't speak Spanish because we're not going to make it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that pressure is off for you.
And that also helps to build up collectiveness, the sense of
Yeah,
group work, the
100%.
sense of working together and achieving
It makes it
collective
fun.
objectives.
It makes it
right? So,
fun.
and
Yeah.
it's a way to gamify your
Yeah,
activities.
exactly, 100%. 100%.
Now, how about games? Because people and teachers and classes and students love playing games, right? But sometimes games create this excitement, overexcitement, yeah? Is there a time in which, or is there a way you could recommend a time for a game? In what parts of the class, in what moments of the class, and how long should they be? Is it okay to be in a Kahoot, like let's say for 15, 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, or playing a game for 20, 25 minutes? What happens then?
I'd say make it short and sweet and to the point, because a silly analogy. If we ate cake all day, every day, it would get kind of stale. We would get kind of tired of it.
Okay.
We do want to
gain
establish routines, but we don't want to get too predictable. We
Yeah.
want to keep surprising our students.
Okay.
So probably a Kahoot of 10 minutes to review, for me to see how things are doing, for me to know what to action on subsequent classes, and it shouldn't take like too long probably.
Okay. How about cutting or finishing the game when it's at its peak point and students are kind of like,
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the situation
Yeah.
in that particular case. I think going back to Lily's part is the game, first of all, has to have an objective and it has to be a reasonable time. And going back to what you said, I'd have to see the situation, I
Yeah.
mean, to see what it was.
so
right?
like living like on a cliffhanger so they can be ready for next time and then you change
Okay.
the pace of the class.
Okay.
Right?
I can see you doing that. Like leave
No.
us hanging. Well, something for more.
No.
Right? We're always going. Okay.
That's why we're going to stop now and come back. No, of course not.
There you go.
Of course not.
Perfect.
But for example, at times
Yeah.
your class goes nuts, goes off rails, off
Oh,
trails.
yes.
And how do you change that setting? How do you change that mood? Because you want to go back into
Yeah.
something that's quieter. What happens then?
Brain breaks, brain breaks, brain breaks. Key. Number one, obviously, you teachers that are watching today, you know your students, and you also know the time of day, right? We all know the nightmare scenario is having students right after physical education or right after lunch. Those are two of the nightmare times to have your students come back. So we have to think strategically. I always tell students. I always tell teachers, you want to think of two types of brain breaks. You want to think of energizer brain breaks or kind of relaxing brain breaks. And you need to make the decision on which one is appropriate for the time. Now, many of our series in primary have brain breaks right in Practice Extra if you're using that. If not, or in addition to, literally, you can go to YouTube or Google and type in brain breaks for the age in which you are teaching, and they will list a whole bunch of them. I love brain breaks where there's like breathing, right, and music. Nice relaxing music. Maybe if you need to temporarily turn the lights off just for a couple of minutes. It's about getting them back into focus.
Okay.
Getting them back into focus, which is really, really important. Right?
Because classes don't always need to keep the same pace all the
Yeah.
time, do they, Lily?
No, not really. I mean, there's time for serious work, for example, with readings, to develop those skills, for language work. But we also need to give them some space to breathe, especially after something so extraneous like reading a lot. We need to have some brain breaks. And how often would you say we should have a brain break?
Oh, okay, that's a good question.
Actually, to be honest, I don't think there's a particular rule. I don't think there's wrong with having one every class. And if your class is longer, if you need two, because maybe at the beginning of the class they're on the roof and you need to bring them down, but towards the end of the class they're falling asleep, so you need to bring them back up.
So
I just want to. You said something really important. I think that I just want to call out about one of you said you don't need to be. I think you just said that you don't need to be at the top for the entire class. And I'll tell you, years ago, I got that feedback as a teacher. Because for those of you who know me, I'm a little energetic. And so sometimes when I was planning my classes, I literally would have my students here at the top for the entire 60 minutes. And one observer said to me at the end, it's like, whew, your students must be exhausted. And I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah. And so my greatest analysis of how or advice to give to teachers now is to think of yourself like a DJ. So in a party, back many years ago, I used to be a wedding DJ in another life. And so think about it like this. You kind of bring the energy up, and then you can't maintain that for the entire night. So you have to bring the energy down a little, and then up, and then down, and then up. Think of it like that. And your students will leave the class at a great level, and they won't leave their class like they just did a 60-minute aerobics workout.
I didn't know you were a DJ, right?
I was in another
it
life,
was
a wedding
difficult
DJ.
to keep people high on waltz, right? And then low, right? Okay,
There
you're
you go.
right. Well,
There you
no,
have
of
it.
course.
There
No,
you
but
go.
I think that's a great tool. That's a great idea. It's like keep like the pace,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's not a roller coaster, but it's like keeping momentum and
Yeah.
gaining this time, and then it's time to go into so. Now, that takes me to another concept and approach that we have in Cambridge,
Yeah.
which is the bite-sized learning, right? Should activities be this long all the time? Tell us a little bit about the bite-sized learning approach.
Yeah, sure. They are short activities that we can do at any point, again, with a clear communicative purpose. For example, with another set of students, we were checking interrupted past, and instead of doing exercises, one after another, I had them go out to the schoolyard and record little videos of what they were doing when something else happened. So they were actually using the language, using it in context. It took like 10 minutes. They uploaded them to Padlet, and everybody could see them and even react to what happened. Like one of them tripped and kind of died, and they were saying, "Oh my God, are you okay?" So this activity took in setup very little, just making the Padlet. And for it to happen, it took just like 10 minutes.
All right, okay. So can you apply bite-sized learning to most of the activities in your class?
Yeah, and I want to really focus on this because I think this is probably one of the most important things in 2026 and beyond. We are in a TikTok generation. And I want you to think most of your students spend way too long, and adults, including me, and probably Lily, and probably Ricardo,
Yes.
spend way too much time scrolling. And even I, as an adult who is fully developed, I have an issue where even last night, I'll be honest, and last night I went to bed and I was lying in bed and I thought just a couple minutes, and like half an hour later, I realized I was still scrolling through Instagram and watching Reels, etc. But that has kind of made my mind mush at times. But so imagine if that's happening to us as adults, what's happening to your students? So your students are doing this, they're getting this like little 30 seconds pieces of dopamine over and over again. And then you expect them to come into your class and listen to you speak about the present perfect for 25 minutes? Hashtag
Por favor.
no way. So what you said, Ricardo, was so important. Bite-sized activities for everything. When you are planning your classes, think how long is this activity? And if your students get bored after 15 minutes doing the same thing, maybe it's us that needs to change and not just our students, right? And I think that's important to keep in mind.
Now that you just mentioned the word change, and that helps me introducing this new part of the conversation.
Yeah.
There are things that stay and there are things that change, right, in classes. And we talked about routines, and we talked about promoting change in our classes. What happens, or in what moments do we need to rush students, and when do we stop them for a little while? In what moment do we need to go? Because we need, I mean, and I'm sure teachers are saying like, yes, of course, but I have a class and I have a program to follow. So you tell me bite-sized learning sounds fun, but I still have a program. So are there some moments in which we can rush our students without really adding too much pressure to them?
Yeah, sure. For example, these bite-sized activities lend themselves to having very clear time limits, and we can get our students used to these time limits from the very beginning. We need to say, you have 5 minutes to go out, record your 10, 15-second video. You have another 5 minutes to upload it, and really respect our timings. That's when we can rush them, because it's just one single activity with a clear purpose, time limits.
No, and Lily, yes. I think we've talked about this before. It's like we sometimes as teachers have this imaginary definition of time where, and I'm sure everyone who's watching can relate to this at some point in their career, where you have said, okay, everyone, you have 5 minutes. And then 12 minutes later, you say, okay, you have 4 more minutes.
Yeah,
and
3
students,
more, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And students learn that time is just a fantasy, right? So this, if you want this to stick, you need from day one. So starting Monday, you need to mean it. Plan accordingly of your time limits and stick with it. Yeah.
And that's also part of class management or classroom
for sure,
management.
for sure.
No, it has to do with time, but it also has to do with the way we give instructions. How much of classroom management really refers to the way we give instructions to our students?
I think it's pivotal to classroom management because a bad set of instructions can confuse students, can cause chaos in the classroom, like, hey, what did the teacher say?
Yeah.
You know, we want to have our instructions clear, especially if they are long. For
Okay.
example, with an activity, step 1, maybe they do step 1. Step 2, step 2. Step 3, they do step 3.
So instead of giving instructions about stage or step 1, 2, 3, or stages in class, so it's just like breaking down into smaller
Yes,
pieces, right?
exactly. And one more thing I would add to giving instructions is economy on words. We live in a very polite society. We want to be very polite to our students. Would you be so kind as to please open your book on page 85? Too many words. So we can still be polite with please open your books.
Okay. All right. Okay. And how about giving instructions that are clear, loud, and how do you make sure that your students really understood what they had to do and they are on task?
Yeah, so first, what Lily said, spot on. Make sure that you have short commands, right? So please open your books to page 86. Look at exercise 3. Write 3 sentences. Blah, 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 right? That's number 1. Number 2, after you've given those instructions, hold up the book or whatever the case may be. Now, as we know, there's different ways you can do it. You can either, if it's a higher level, you can have a higher level student say, can you summarize what I said? That's one way. But that takes a higher level and more language. If you have lower levels or students that are just having a harder time understanding, ask very specific questions like, okay, how many examples do you need to write? 4, teacher. Do you need to write 5? No, teacher, it's
Okay.
4. You just said 4. Okay. Very specific questions. And at other times, again, you want to maybe do different techniques. At other times, you could have one student who, demonstrate as well. That could be
Okay.
better. But I really like the very simple yes or no questions. How many sentences? Or do you have to write 4 sentences, 5 sentences, 6 sentences? Do you have 5 minutes or do you have 10 minutes?
And these questions may seem kind of obvious, right? And
Yeah.
your students may say, teacher, come on, you just said it. Why do I need to remind
yeah,
you?
yeah.
But the more obvious the question, the better understanding
Yes.
we can gauge from that, right?
For sure, for sure.
So can we say that if it took us 5, 6, 7 minutes to give instructions, we were probably doing something not necessarily right? Yeah.
No, exactly.
We need to revisit the way we give instructions.
And also make sure if you're giving materials, don't give the materials out until you've given the instructions.
Okay.
I think most teachers have figured that out because they've seen what happens when you do that.
Yes.
It kind of turns into chaos because
Right.
everyone's not paying attention.
Or if you ask them to get in trios or in groups, small groups, it's going to be difficult to give instructions afterwards.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
100%,
It's
yeah.
not going to be like easy to keep students attentive
Yeah.
to what you are saying. So there are different ways to cope with classroom management, giving clear instructions,
Yeah.
tell them to be on task,
100%.
having people or students doing what they have to do, and they.
yeah.
And what do you do while they are performing a task? I mean, they are. You gave your clear instructions, Lily. They did really well. They are working in small groups. They have stages. What do? You go back to TikTok, or what do you do?
Oh, yes, definitely. And scroll another 15 minutes. No, not true. What I want to do is keep a notebook where I can keep my notes.
Okay.
But not only notes on mistakes, for example. If they are doing, I don't know, a prediction task for reading, I want to write down the most interesting predictions I hear or all the predictions I hear. Maybe make a record of them on the board. But I want them to know that I am listening to what they are saying, not only how they are saying it.
Okay.
I'm listening to their ideas also.
All right. So you keep notes. Do you also keep notes?
I do. I think what you just said is really great to mention those things. I like to say this also. Catch your students doing something right.
Exactly.
Instead of always catching them doing something wrong. And this also goes back to the whole Spanish-English debate when teachers are like, they speak so much Spanish. Instead of always saying, don't speak Spanish, don't speak Spanish, don't speak Spanish. Instead, catch them when they're speaking English. Say, Lily, that was fabulous. I really enjoyed listening to you doing that. And then the next time, Lily will start to associate that positive reinforcement.
Right.
Instead of because after a while, it just sounds like a broken record.
Right.
And you don't even listen to what the teacher's saying anymore.
And the most used phrase throughout the school year is don't speak Spanish, right?
Exactly,
So we don't want
100%.
that.
Yeah.
But okay, I think that's a great note because you give your students that highlight on speaking English and praising them or giving them
Yeah,
some
for sure.
feedback. Just make sure that it's something that's really important. It's not just to say, "Oh, Lily, you said present," right? When calling the fantastic use of a language. No, go for something that's like.
Well,
"Oh,
but if
good
Lily
use of
has
language."
never said anything in English
Well,
before,
all right,
I mean,
okay.
that's great, right?
Well,
Yeah.
you just don't throw a party for that, right? But you say, "Oh, present."
there you
Okay, all right.
Can
Okay,
I
now.
just add on to that, actually?
Yeah.
'Cause we've been talking a lot about, because communication is more than just the words that are coming out of your mouth. And so some of you are watching, we've had these conversations before. Communication also involves some of the things we were talking about earlier with ground rules, etc. So also giving feedback on those kinds of things also are beneficial and helps, going back to that shy student that maybe we talked about at the beginning, helping build their confidence level. Because remember that sometimes if I don't know how to say every word in English, if I say half in English and half in
Spanish.
Spanglish and half with body language, that's fabulous. I'm celebrating that. I think that's really, really great, right?
And it's building up.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
You cannot expect all your students to start using fluent English all the time from the very beginning. Right? Let's switch a little bit, right? Let's change the dynamic a little bit because there are some myths and legends about
okay.
the classroom.
Okay.
So,
Okay, here we go.
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Are you ready for this? I hope we're ready, and I'm sure people would be responding as well. So let's see. Let's talk about some crossfire because I'm going to be asking each one of you different questions, and you would respond either true or false, or you give a very quick statement.
Okay.
Right? Okay. I'm going for number one. Young learners can't handle serious content, Brad.
Ooh. What was it?
Young learners can't handle serious content.
False. But it depends on how you approach it. If you are overly serious yourself, they can't handle it. They can't handle the fun stuff either if you're overly serious, right?
All right.
So if you plan a dynamic class, bite-sized activities, interactive activities in the way that you do the serious content, I can think of some of our books that have great topics that are serious but are presented in a fun way. So
All right.
false.
False.
I hope everyone
All
in the chat agrees with me.
All right. Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, teens don't care about anything. Defend or confirm that.
They do care about things. They very much care about, for example, things like their friends, their favorite band, their favorite music, their crush. They care about many things. So we need to take advantage of that and incorporate it somehow into our lessons.
All right. Okay. What do you think about that? I mean,
Well, I
would you
think-
go along with that?
This is key, and this is why, remember, next week on Monday, you're going to have an extra attendance list where you're writing all their likes and dislikes. And you will, again, when you're coming up, whatever topic you're teaching, you're going to refer to that and make constant references to the things that they do like, so it brings up their attention. Right?
Right. Just be careful because if it's teenage students, right?
Uh-huh.
Their idols in September might be different in October and November. right?
100%, yes,
Your
keep that in
students will
mind,
say,
yeah, for
"Hi,
sure."
teacher, that was so last month," right?
Like
No,
6-7. 6-7 is over.
Farminora, Farminora.
Right? No.
6-7 is-
Now people farm aura, right? Okay.
There you
Let's
go.
not go there. Let's
no,
not
no.
go there
No.
because we're farming. I hope
There you
we're
go.
not
We're
doing that.
farminora,
No, no,
hopefully.
hopefully not. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, adult classes are doomed to be boring.
Oh, hashtag no. Hashtag they are the most they can be the most fun because of the great topics you can have. I mean, I love teaching adults because you can have real life conversation and debates and no. Just no all the way around.
No.
all the way around.
All right. Now, are you ready for next one?
Yeah,
Yes, you both. Okay. Which age group? which age group is secretly the hardest to teach?
Personally or generally? Well, it depends, because the ones I used to find a little bit more challenging were teenagers, because I was very close in age to them. So they saw me as one of them.
Okay.
But something I would like to mention about that, if we want to be successful teaching teenagers, something I learned the hard way,
Yeah.
is that we can be friendly with them, of course, warm,
Okay.
compassionate, and
Yeah.
taking into account their interests, but not their friends.
All right.
There's a difference.
In your case?
In the same question?
Yes.
Yeah. What was the exact statement?
All right. It's like which
Age group. Oh,
age
yeah, what's
group?
the most difficult? I think teenagers of a certain age pose more challenges, but with the right creativity. And so when I say challenges, I'm saying like 13, 14 years old, around that age. Because I remember and I always, by the way, I always tell teachers, I want you to remember what it was like when you were 13 years old or 14 years old, when they have that look
Yeah.
on their face and you're thinking, and I tell teachers, remember what you were going through. And sometimes that look is actually them just being scared out of their minds inside, and that's how they react, right? So
Right.
I think that's something to keep. I love older teenagers; they're fabulous to work with.
And
yeah.
I think all age groups present challenges,
Yeah, for
right?
sure, yeah.
At different stages, different ways, different approaches, how to handle them. But I'm sure every teacher there has like secretly the hardest age group to teach. Maybe
Yeah.
they want to write it down. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the session,
Okay,
but
okay.
I still have a few things to ask, questions about. Young learners need games. Old learners need explanations. True or false, Lily?
I'd say false, because going back a little bit to the competencies for life,
Yeah.
we want our
Okay.
students to develop critical thinking.
Yeah.
And the approach that we use generally for teaching
Yeah.
language is language in context, inductive.
Yeah.
We want them to see the language being used
Yeah.
Okay.
and to analyze it with our help, with our guidance. Our questioning is key. So no, because again, TikTok generation, what Brad was mentioning before, even us adults got used to that short form content. So the moment we start having lengthy explanations, don't get me wrong, there are going to be those who do need it still, but it's too much, and they get a very passive role. We want to gain a more active role. Again, we want them
Okay.
to think about the language, to analyze it, to see the patterns, to identify, to notice. So I'd say false.
All right, okay. Brad, are you ready for the next one?
Yeah, for sure,
All right.
100%.
Are you sitting down?
I am.
All right,
I am.
okay, very good. If the class is not speaking English, it is the teacher's fault. Defend or destroy that statement.
I don't like to use the word fault because that's kind of accusatory.
Right.
However, I think we as teachers set the tone. The example I always like to give is many, many years ago, like 20 years ago, I was working for my first teaching job in Mexico, in Guadalajara, and I knew I knew 3 words of Spanish. Hola, gracias, adios. And I was given a true beginner class. And when I first was given that, I was so scared. But I took it as a challenge. And so I worked my butt off to plan that class. I used cognates and visuals, etc. It was 20 years later, it's one of my warmest memories
Okay.
of we still had communication happening because at that moment, they knew they couldn't speak Spanish because I didn't understand them.
right.
And so we set the tone. And going forward throughout the years, as I've talked to other teachers and had other classes, etc., it's the tone you set on day one. And if you allow it on day one, they'll do it on day 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
Now again, this is depending upon the age group and the level. I'm not saying, Kinder 1, obviously we're going to have Spanish, and that's very different than if we're talking a C1 level in high
Absolutely,
school. Right?
absolutely. Okay, we're running out of
Yeah.
time, and we need to go to questions. Just one more thing here, Lily. The best teachers are the ones who talk the least. Agree?
I agree to a great extent because, again, traditionally TTT and teacher talking time has been like teacher, students, right? So we have made the shift towards having more of a balance. It's dialogic teaching. It's not just me giving explanations. It's not just me whose word is gospel. It's me questioning my student, asking them to participate, to give me
Okay.
their opinions, to give me the answers.
All right. Now, I don't know if we have any questions from the audience. Are there any questions? Just no. All right. We're doing good. So maybe we have a little bit of time to wrap up with final tips. We're getting close to the end of it. So it's been, I mean, time flies,
Fabulous,
right?
yeah,
I mean, we
okay.
could be doing this for
hours.
For hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, no, bite size, remember, bite
Yes,
size,
yes,
bite
yes.
size. Okay, so give us a final reflection on the school year, like your thoughts, your ideas, anything you would like to share
I
for
kind of
them
want
to
to
have
do
a
a
school year.
summary of my main tips, right? So that's kind
Okay.
of what I talked about. So number one, next week, keep in mind what I said about the extra attendance list, where you're keeping track of different things about your students. You're going to use those in examples. That's number one. Number two, make sure that you do some form of communication ground rules. Get together with your students. Make sure you come up with them together. And number three, diagnostic test. Make sure you have planned in the first 2 weeks of your classes some form of diagnostic test. I'll start with those three, and then Lily, I don't know if you
All
want to
right,
add some of
okay.
yours. Uh-huh.
Well, piggybacking on what
Okay.
you said,
Okay.
yes, diagnosis is of the essence. Also, classroom expectations, not only communication-wise,
Yeah,
but
for
also
sure.
behavior-wise,
Yeah.
especially with the younger ones. And I would say also setting the tone for the rest of the school year.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
do we want to be too strict? Do we have to strike a balance between being, too strict and a little bit lighthearted?
Yeah.
What do we want to be, and what do we want our students to achieve?
All right.
It's just very quick. It's always easier to start a little stricter and become less strict instead of the opposite way around. And
Okay.
I keep that in
Very
mind,
true,
teachers.
yeah.
All right.
I keep that in mind.
And,
True,
and perhaps a bit of reflection of the teacher we were last year and the teacher we want to be this year, right? To think
that's
about
great,
to
yeah.
think about how we want to do things for this school year,
For sure.
how we want to come up with new ideas, how we want to refresh or reinvent ourselves as teachers. I think teachers are getting hopefully lots of tips. We would like to hear, well, not to hear, but to read the reactions.
sure.
There, I'm sure they will have something. We should be doing this more often, shouldn't
Yeah,
we?
for sure,
Right?
definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I feel like
and-
we've invited people over to our house for coffee.
Absolutely,
We just can't
right?
see them, but
Oh, right. Okay. Coffee with Cambridge, right? That's
Yeah.
coming. That's
There you
coming
go.
very
Perfect.
soon. Well, I don't know about you. For me, it's been a great experience.
sure.
Always sharing and learning from you, and I'm sure teachers are on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. It has been great. We wish you the best for the school year. I'm sure that this Start with Cambridge would be one of the many momentums we will have. It's been amazing. Have a fantastic school year. Lily, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brad,
thank you, teachers. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ricardo. Thank
one
you,
last
Lily.
word for teachers before they go.
Don't forget the fun.
Breathe.
All right. It's been amazing. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Grow. Grew. Grown. When you grow up, what will you be when you grow up? She grows, she learns, she improves. Her interest is growing. She grows she will prove herself. She grows in curiosity. She is curious.
Curiosity.
Her passion is growing stronger. She grows in confidence. She grows in confidence. I will grow in confidence, prove myself, and reach my full potential. This is where ambition grows, where potential grows, and where your future grows. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to learn about the sky at night. Cambridge is where your world grows.